If you are comparing your walk with Jesus to somebody else's and you're determining how good of a walk you're doing based on somebody else's performance, I don't think that's what it was about in the first place. And he designed you on purpose for a reason, and you're more than enough. And when we begin to embrace that, give ourselves grace for everything that doesn't meet our standard, that's where the magic happens, and that's where the growth happens.
I would like to hear you speak specifically to Christians with ADHD, because a lot of us feel like we're a bad Christian because I believe we're comparing ourselves to the neurotypical Christian and just all these standards of like, you got to read your Bible every day. You got to be in church and pay attention the whole time and stay focused. And you have to pray every day. And, you know, if you get distracted during prayer, that means you don't care and you don't love God. And just all these things we tell ourselves of like, if I cared enough, then I would be able to do it. But like, I mean, the reality is my brain does not function like everyone else's, and I'm just going to have to do things a little differently.
Comparison is the thief of joy. Mm-hmm. If you are comparing your walk with Jesus to somebody else's and you're determining how good of a walk you're doing based on somebody else's performance, I don't think that's what it was about in the first place. Mm-hmm. That whole conversation is between you and God. And there's no one's judgment that gets to reign on whether or not you're doing it right, whether or not you're doing it well enough, whether or not you're accurately showing up as a good Christian. And that judgment just isn't welcome in the level of grace that I think God provides for us. So grace upon grace upon grace upon grace. And when you feel like, again, back in a place of not enough, if I tried hard, all that stuff comes right back to you, just like grace upon grace upon grace upon grace upon grace, because that's what he gave us. And if he gave it to us, then the only issue is whether or not we're choosing to receive it. And that's all us on us. That doesn't have anything to do with what he's provided. That has to do with the mental blocks between us and going, well, he gave me grace, but I don't deserve that grace. Well, he gave me grace, but I'm not doing enough to receive that. Oh, he gave me grace, but I'm not praying enough to deserve it. I don't know what the story is. And in my humble opinion, and by no means am I a pastor, in my humble opinion, it's not about a checklist. Mm-hmm. It's just not. It's about a relationship. And whatever that looks like for you in your life, and you doing it to the best of your ability in the moment that you're doing it, knowing that you're giving your best, is more than enough. And you're more than enough. And he designed you on purpose for a reason, and you're more than enough. And when we begin to embrace that and give ourselves grace for everything that doesn't meet our standard, that's where the magic happens, and that's where the growth happens. And it's just allowing it to flow.
Hmm. And could you offer some encouragement for just finding out how God designed us to follow him? Like, we're trying to love him, we're trying to love other people, we're trying to follow Jesus. And when it doesn't look like what we expected or what we hoped, it can be very discouraging when you try and you fail and you try and you fail and you try and you fail to try again. I tried walking in nature and praying and I got distracted, and I tried praying in prayer meeting and I got distracted. Like, how can I have a prayer life? Like, how can I keep trying and failing? God must be so disappointed in me.
What do you consider a failure?
It didn't work.
What didn't work?
Like, I thought that I would have this meaningful connection with God and we would be so close and I'd have this revelation or something, but really it was like, pray, oh, a bird, and pray, oh, a plane. And like, oh no, I wasn't praying. I wasn't connecting. I was distracted. And I just felt frustrated by the end of it instead of close to God.
Were you praying?
Some of it.
So, and I don't know, because I'm not in your prayer life. Mm-hmm. I bet there's more time and energy wasted on your judgment of you for your distractions than actually on the physical distraction. And And if you had more non-resistance around the fact that you're distracted and you surrendered to that process, I'm going to get distracted and I'm going to choose back in. But you didn't resist the fact that you got distracted in the first place. You would gain back so much time with him and release the judgment and the resistance on yourself. And when you're back in that place of going, I'm just going to accept that it looks different, that you'll actually experience more of his love, because he's not far from
you. Yeah.
He's not far. He's right there. We're the one going, it doesn't look this way. He didn't get any further or any closer than he was always in the same place. He's consistent. He's always there. He's always available. It's our human nature that goes, I think he's further now. I'm disappointed in the way I showed up. I think he's further now. That's our human way of looking at it. It's not from his perspective.
If there's something that you can just say, anything that you want to say that very important to you that you think is very helpful for others, I would love to hear you just share.
I had this really powerful message from my pastor at City Church last weekend. He spoke to the story of the prodigal son. He was speaking to it as the father and the father's love, and that there was almost this like prideful son, and then this prodigal son that needed redemption, basically. And what I chose to hear is, on either side, our judgment of us is what keeps us from coming back, or our judgment of others is what keeps us from being happy with what is, and content with what is, and peaceful with what is. And in both of those scenarios, like the underlying to me comes back to this judgment. And from my perspective, as a Christian, and as somebody who's totally wrestled in faith, like it's not always been easy for me, and it's not even easy right now. Worth it, absolutely. But to come back to this piece of what I experience most that I've chosen to keep me from God is either the judgment I think he has on me, or the judgment I think other Christians have on me, or the judgment I have on me. Well, that all comes back to this place of judgment, which I really don't think is what Christ was about, based on the way I read my Bible. And to come back to this place of like, what if it was actually about love and acceptance and compassion and grace and kindness and forgiveness? And when we choose to live in that place, and that's so fruitful, and it's not perfect. It's just as messy as it's ever been. Guess what? People are going to disappoint me, and I'm going to disappoint other people, and people that I look up to are going to disappoint me, and people that look up to me I'm going to disappoint. And if it just came back to this, like, hey, what if everybody's doing the best they can with what they have? Everybody, even the person you loathe the most in the world, is doing the best they can with what they have in the current moment they have it. Whether or not that's true, if I choose to live with that kind of compassion and grace, which only comes through Christ, I'm a more peaceful person. So I guess when you ask, what do I want people to know? If nobody's told you today, you're loved, you're forgiven, you're wanted, you're chosen, you're cherished. And if you don't choose to believe that, go to your local church, go talk to your pastor, have the courage to go, hey, I'm doubting. And somebody's going to love you, and read your Bible, and an answer is going to come to you. How many crazy times have I just opened my Bible up and gone, I don't know what I'm searching for, Lord, but you do. And it's the perfect message always. How does he do that? I don't know. He always does it. And to just go like, you're not alone, and it's going to be okay. And there's safety in that, and reach out. And if you don't feel confident going to your local church, and you don't feel confident opening your Bible, then find me on social media and send me a message, and I'll encourage you. And you're just not alone. And the judgment thing, just let it go. It's not worth it.
And it's really not helpful at all.
To anything you say you want. Judgment does not work. It's ineffective.
Yeah. And since coming out of doing the Clemmer stuff, I just had this realization that like, oh, wow, it really comes down to like what is helpful, what is harmful. And that's just a much clearer way to look at things than, well, what's right, what's wrong. And whatever is right will always be helpful. Might not feel nice, but it's always going to be helpful. And sin is just always going to be harmful. Sin is never going to be helpful. So it's just a much more, I guess, less judgment there. Not like, like, oh, I was really not kind there to my family. Like, that's definitely harmful. And it's easier to just go make amends, you know, when it's not, oh, I'm bad, I'm a bad person. Totally.
Because it's no longer about self-preservation and protection. Now it's about a journey and an opportunity and like, okay, I wasn't the person that I wanted to be in that moment. I can go apologize and it doesn't make me bad. It doesn't make me wrong. And I am a firm believer of throw the good, bad, right, wrong stuff out the window. And I'm not talking about morality, but I'm talking about just the judgment that we put on ourselves around all the rules we've created around how it should be, just like releasing it.
Yeah, those labels.
Yeah.
I am bad. Like,
totally.
Yeah, it's not helpful.
Not helpful.